Hi,
Hi there.
Patrick.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing? Thank you so much for being so flexible.
Yeah, well, timing happened to work out really well, and I had another meeting changed to earlier, so I was like, "Oh, okay, that works."
I love when God puts our calendars in the right path. How's your day coming along?
My day has been excellent.
I love it, sir.
Where are you located?
I'm in Virginia,
Virginia. Okay, so I'm in Vancouver, Canada. I'm on the West Coast.
West Coast. Yeah, that's why I was like, hey, I wonder if it will work for him because usually I don't like to do later things, but I was like, this just might work out because that would have been an early morning or morning thing for you.
Yeah. How do I pronounce your first name?
It sounds like lemonade, so it's Junaid like lemonade.
Yep. Okay, that's how I would have said it, but I thought maybe there's a silent AI or something. I don't know.
Oh man, we don't want silent AIs, especially in this time.
Yeah, true. Oh, true. Good point.
Wow,
Uh,
I actually have an AI in my name. Check that
oh,
out.
there you
It's
go.
not even
There you go.
AI in my middle name. That's funny. All right, so I'm just waiting on my notes to come up, and then we'll jump right into the episode. Yeah, I just finished another episode today. My morning episode, that guy didn't show up. I'm like, what?
Really?
Dude,
That sucks.
yeah. So I had some extra time.
It's all good
Oh,
as long as somebody gives you a heads up, right? So you can
yeah,
make other arrangements, but
yeah, yeah.
stuff happens, I guess.
But it's always a fun thing when you have an extra time. Like you have a meeting on your calendar and it gets canceled. I'm like, oh, cool. I can actually do some work.
Yeah.
I'm gonna hit pause and record again. Welcome back to another episode of Hacks and Hobbies. And today we have a truly inspiring guest with us. Someone who has spent over 40 years mastering entrepreneurship, real estate, and leadership. Patrick Francey is the CEO of Real Estate Investment Network and the host of his award winning podcast, The Everyday Millionaire. Patrick, I'm super excited to have you here. Thank you so much for coming on.
I'm excited to be here. I'm really excited.
Before we dive into your strategies for building winning culture, I would love to learn a little bit more about you and how did you transition from being a multi-business owner to become a renowned leader in the real estate education.
Well, I think it's all part of the same. My journey, into being a entrepreneur and a business owner started literally 40 some years ago. One of the businesses that I own just in fact celebrated its 40th anniversary.
Amazing.
So along that journey, I was like many young entrepreneurs, I was there and without realizing it, had bought myself a job. I was a technician. I was just in love with what I was doing, thought we were fantastic. But as I grew the business, I understand it. I came to understand that I was hitting my own ceiling of limitation. I didn't know what it was at the time, but a
Mm,
good friend of mine who actually happened to also be a client walked in the door one day and invited me to go golfing the next day. It wasn't even like in the moment. I go, gosh, I don't have time for that. And he goes, yeah, we'll make time. And I go, listen, when I have your kind of business, your kind of money, I'll have that kind of time. And he said to me, he said, Patrick, I'm just going to invite you to consider that when you start working on your business instead of in your business, you will have time to go golfing. Now, this many years later, that phrase is common. We're all familiar
hmm
with it, or most are. But 30 some years ago, when I heard that, 35 years ago, when he shared that with me, it was like quite profound and it never had occurred to me. So, that was a kind of the fork in the road realization moment. And I started to shift from there and went on to build that business and other businesses. And then in 2000 started investing in real estate. And
hmm
that led to me buying another business called the Real Estate Investment Network, which is an education business. And that's where we are today. I'm CEO of the Real Estate Investment Network. I still own my other businesses along with my wife.
Yeah.
Stephanie, who is a Olympic and world-class mental performance coach, athletic mental performance coach. And that's kind of how we are today.
Man, that is so amazing. Now, your experience spans decades, like you mentioned. You just celebrated 40 years for one of the companies that you've been working with, working at, working on. I don't know which term to use anymore, right? But can you tell us what it means to develop a winning culture, and why is it so crucial for business growth?
Well, I think there's a couple aspects to it, Junaid. And the first off is that in order to actually grow a business, to call it a business, the ultimate goal has to be is, can I step away from my business for an extended period of time? Can that
Mm,
business operate on its own? So the business that well, two businesses, one that I own and my wife collectively, we own a couple other businesses. That's in a totally other province. It's a 2-hour flight.
yeah,
And so the point of that conversation is that we first have to differentiate and say, are we business owners or are we entrepreneurs, solopreneurs? Do we own a business called what we would refer to as an asset, or did we buy ourselves a job? Now, not one is right and one is wrong, or
of course.
whatever you decide, but be clear on it. If you want to own a business one day that will operate on its own, that you can call an asset, that you can sell, then you have to treat it like a business and you work
Mm,
backwards from that. Now, why is that important? Well, whether you're an entrepreneur and you've got a team around you and maybe you got 5, 10, 25, 250 employees, doesn't matter, is culture is absolutely everything. And how do we create a culture? Well, first off, we have to do it intentionally. And if we own that business, we're the pointy end of the spear, that business should be a reflection of who we are. If we really want to love what we're doing, that business
yeah,
needs to be a reflection of our values and what we do. That means our team needs to understand what those values are. And to create that culture, I go through a process of creating and defining culture with my team so that they own it. So in other words, we define the culture. I do a 1 day kind of get together with everybody, even including my suppliers, by the way. I
mm,
do that once a year, and I actually have a discussion. I facilitate. I have a whiteboard and or a flip chart. And I go, okay, guys, what do we stand for? What do we want to be about? And I'm not just talking about front facing. I'm talking about we as a team. And they throw ideas out. It can be, well, everybody's got to show up on time, and there can't be any blaming and complaining, and there can't be any gossip, and we have to do what we say we're going to do. And so we list all those things. And, like I say, I facilitate and I nudge. I know what outcome I want, and I
yeah,
plant ideas. It's all part of facilitation.
yeah,
And when we get that sheet totally exhausted, could be 50 things on there, doesn't matter if it's 50 or 15. I go, okay, so does everybody agree with this? Is there anything we should change, take off, add? What's your thoughts? And we go through that list and we hone it down, we refine it, we tweak it, we change a couple of words. And I can have 25 people in that particular group. And I
mhm,
go, okay, is there anything here that somebody disagrees with? Nope, this is it. So we've
wow,
covered all the things. How we treat each other, how we say we're going to do. Gossip is the first thing at the top of the list. No gossip. If you can't say it in front of the person, then just don't say it. Good or
yeah,
bad, doesn't matter. Don't talk about
100%,
it. Don't complain. If you're going to complain, then do something about it. Put it in the solution. Go talk to somebody if you need to. All
yeah,
of those things. The point is that when it's all done, what I then do is I say, okay, everybody come by and initial this sheet of paper. We then rip it off the flip chart. We then post it somewhere where everybody can see it. And what's interesting about creating that kind of culture, Junaid, is that now it's I'll say self-policing. It's just that
mhm,
now somebody walks in the door late, somebody walks in and starts complaining, somebody gets caught gossiping. I can look at you and let's say we're workmates, and I go, dude, we just talked about this. We agreed. We all
mhm,
agreed that we wouldn't do this. We
mhm,
all agreed we wouldn't be late. And
yeah,
so this becomes a way of just how you operate. And the weak links, guess what? They call themselves. We don't have to call the herd. They call
yeah,
themselves because they're not willing to live into it. They
yeah,
can't put up with the pressure. They leave. What it does is open up space for the right people to show up because we're hiring based on that culture. So a long answer to a short question, but that gives you some, hopefully some context and some real meat on the bone that people can use.
No, that's really powerful because it's kind of a culture that you want to create inside your home too, right? So now you're expanding that family from not just being in your home and how the kids should be working together at your home, but now it's the work culture. So it's everybody's more transparent, everybody's more accountable, everybody's more like, okay, yeah, hey, we all talked about this. How can we clean it? And then you end up with A class citizens and A class employees in your
Well,
company.
it's, there's a phrase that I often use, Junaid, which is clarity equals velocity. Your clarity equals your velocity. Now,
Mm,
within our coaching programs that Stephanie and I do, my wife and I do, one of the things we talk about with couples, particularly if we're working with couples, which we often do, is what is the mission statement for your family? And people go, what? Well, what are your
mm,
values? What are your family values? What do you
yeah,
want your children to stand for within your community? Who do you want to show up as? And when you start to work from that place of having these kinds of conversations, you can have fun with it. We've got a couple of clients that their kids are as little or as young as 3 and 4, and they're still planting these seeds, having these conversations because
amazing.
even a 3 and 4 year old can articulate what's important to them. And listen, if you live into those values, it's a better family unit.
You know, I love that you've mentioned your wife a few times, Stephanie. Talk to me about how like when was the time that she got involved in the business?
She's been involved right from day one. We have both always been entrepreneurial. We've been together almost 35 years.
Mm-hmm.
We have always been the couple that wanted to work together. We align. We don't work day to day in the same kind of office. That
Sure.
that would never work for us. But
Yeah,
having said that,
true that.
uh, I have my skill set. She has her skill set. We bring those together and mesh it and make it work. And that's what we've been doing for, like I say, over 30 years. And we've worked together. We align. We have great conversations, and we really do, as a couple, we stand and we live the values that we not only coach, but what we teach and how
Mm,
we run and operate our businesses. So our staff know that when we come into town, they know what to expect. They know the kind of conversations. They get excited because they know it's a culture of just support, of collaboration.
yeah.
And we align. We support the heck out of our management team and make sure that they're getting what they need to succeed. And we're having really great conversations, very open conversations, and they're productive that way as well. Because we understand
Nice.
that they've got their life going on too, and we
Yeah.
want their life to be in alignment with what they do for a living. Because we often use the term, again, a little bit cliche, but when
Mm,
your vocation is like your vacation, you'll never work another day in your life. And
yeah.
we all have bad days where we don't feel like working, but if we can create a business environment and a business culture that lights us up when we go in rather than shuts us down,
Mm-hmm.
it's way easier to go to work every day.
Man, I love that so much because that's what I want to get to with my wife, right? So she has her own work, I have my business, and eventually I want to make sure that we all come together. We're doing the coaching and bringing our expertise together in the
Sure.
different ways in business. So that would be a really fun way to work together in the future.
But that starts also, Junaid, with having a real understanding of what and how you as a couple operate, who you are as a couple. Stephanie and I are really clear on who we are as a couple.
Mm,
And, there's certain rules of engagement that we have. It's how we are as a couple. It's what lights us up, individually, but also what lights us up in our life. We know
mm,
our purpose, we know our mission. We live it, we work at it, we get lit up every time we have the opportunity to live into it.
mm,
So we're pretty clear on that. And when you can, again, the term clarity equals velocity, I don't want to minimize. It's not just words. If you really unpack that and understand that a lot of people get stuck or they find that things are sticky and they can't
yeah.
figure out why, but they can't articulate and be clear in what it is that they stand for. What are their core values? And I'm not talking about moral values, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about core values. What
Yeah.
really matters to you? And most people, you ask that question and they can't even really articulate one or two of their top values.
Yeah. And thank you so much for digging into to that question. Now, something that you talk about is um, you've mentioned that high performance is often a result of low tolerances. Could you break this down for our audience? What should leaders be looking for in their
Oh,
teams and environments when it comes to tolerance?
okay, so high performance is not often a result of low tolerances. It's always a result of low tolerances. You know, the
Mm,
best description I've given of that particular uh, kind of analogy, if you will, or that statement is if
yeah.
you buy a $30,000 car. We'll just call it
Mm,
a, I don't know, a Ford something. It doesn't matter the brand. We know
sure.
what we get for 30 grand. And you could be a professional driver and you're going to drive the wheels off that car. But
Mm-hmm.
there's a certain speed that when you go into a corner, you're risking everything. You're risking wiping out because the tires, the suspension, the brakes, nothing about that car is designed and
Mm-hmm.
has the tolerances to take a corner at 60 or 80 miles an hour, or if you're talking kilometers, 100 kilometers an hour,
Yeah.
120
Yeah.
kilometers an hour. It's just not designed to do that. Now,
Mm-hmm.
as you go up the chain in the terms of quality of vehicles, as an example, let's say you go to a Porsche. Well, all of a sudden, you look at a Porsche Carrera versus a Porsche Boxster. Each one of those goes to the next level. You know, you go to a
Mm-hmm.
Targa, you go to a Porsche, you know, whatever. You know, each layer is tighter and tighter in low tolerances. All of a sudden, the suspension's tighter, the brakes are tighter, the tires that they're putting on the car are better. There's more horsepower to drive that car because they can.
Mm,
And you go, wow, look at the low tolerances allow for higher performance. And you go,
yeah.
wow, okay, but now get into a supercar, get into a $2 or $3 million Bugatti or a Pagani, and all
Yeah.
of a sudden, the next thing you know, you're doing corners at 180, you know, or 200 or 150, and that's because
Yeah.
the tolerances, every screw, how you're in the seat, the engine, how it fires, the suspension. So if we look at that and we take that metaphor or that analogy and we
Mm,
apply it to our life, understanding that low tolerances are, you know, result in higher performance. And the first question we ask ourselves is, what do we tolerate with ourselves? Because we tolerate a lot. We make promises to ourselves that we don't
yeah.
keep.
Yep.
We think, well, I can't really trust myself. Okay, well, why? That's
Mm,
that is actually, you're tolerating your lack of clarity, your lack of trust, your lack of commitment, your lack of following through. Now, if somebody you didn't know did that, you'd lose your mind.
yeah.
You'd fire
That's
them,
true.
right? Low tolerances is a result, or sorry, high performance is a result of low tolerances. That's within ourselves, within our teams. The more clarity we have with our team. So go back to where we started this
Yeah.
conversation and we talk about culture. Within our culture, we have that statement: high performance is a result of low tolerances. That's why when somebody agrees and says no gossip, no complain, no being late, and they show up and be that way, low tolerances. We don't put up with that shit. That's not what we
Hmm.
agreed to. Okay. So that
Yeah.
tightens it. And then all of a sudden, people quit complaining, they quit gossiping, they quit wasting time, they start showing up and doing what they say they're going to do on
Mm,
time. You follow? So that's the analogy of
I
that
love it.
statement.
I love that so much, man. Low tolerances equal high performance.
Always.
Always. Now, Patrick, you've done a ton of programs. You've done a lot of coaching, and you emphasize the importance of leadership in inspiring teams. What strategies do you use to foster these inspirations? I mean, you've talked about the events that you meet on a yearly basis, but what are some of the other things that you foster to inspire and commitment from team members?
I think there's a fundamental is that I learned many, many years ago. Probably it was an epiphany, one of those fork in the road moments where, you know, for me, and having now 8 years later on my own podcast, The Everyday Millionaire, where I'm interviewing many very accomplished individuals, what I often get around to is asking
Mm-hmm.
about leadership. You know, what is their study? What are their personal habits? What are their professional development or personal development strategies? And
Yeah.
I don't think I've come across anybody, probably I have, who thinks that they're a natural leader. What I've
Mm,
discovered and what is clear is that all great leaders study being great leaders. At some level, they're watching what they read, they're being conscious, they're literally being reflective. Am I being the best version of myself? So the whole point of that is that being an effective leader is a decision and it's a choice. So I'll give you an example of how I operate, what I've learned to do over the years. I'm 66 years old, but back when I was 65 years old, I
mm-hmm.
looked into the future and I said, who do I want to be at 70? Not what do I want to be,
Yeah.
who do I want to be at 70? And I looked at some people that I admired. I didn't know them. One of them happened to be Kennedy Jr.,
Mm-hmm.
Bobby Kennedy Jr. And I went, man, there's some things I like about that guy. And he's at the time was 68, 69 years old. And I go, God, he's fit, he's articulate, he's active. There's nothing passive about what he's doing. He's not sitting around thinking
Yeah.
about retirement. He's like all in. And I go, I love that quality. So I started looking at those qualities and I'm going, okay, you know, you've heard the phrase, as most listeners will have heard, the phrase that it's not about the goal, it's about who you have to become to achieve the goal. In other
Yes.
words, we don't just wake up in 5 years and go, okay, today I'm going to be just like Kennedy Jr. No, no, no.
Yeah.
We
No.
start that process now. And so I got back on my fitness routine. I got back to reading some things that I'd stopped reading. I'd let myself go. I lowered my tolerances. You know,
Mm,
I all of a sudden I was putting up with stuff and I go, no, that's not who I want to be. It's not who I am. And so I put in those corrections. Now, the point of it all is this, is that it's intentional. And who do I want to be as a leader is it's thoughtful, it's very mindful, and it's a very conscious choice for me. And how I articulate, how I speak, how I communicate, the empathy and compassion that I have is really important. The boundaries that I create,
yeah.
and as well, the clarity, again, the clarity I have in the relationships. Now, none of it is without fault, but I just know this is that if I didn't have that intentionality, it wouldn't even
Mm,
be close to what it is today.
man, I love that. Become the person you want to, or have somebody as a role model. This is who I want to be. And I
Well,
think it,
if you want to use a great example of it, you know, because I work with lots of younger people, and to me, anybody under 50 is considered young these days. But the point of it
yay.
is that the point of it is that when we start to understand that who we are today, if we have big goals, is not who's going to achieve those goals in
True.
the physical body, but
Yeah.
who you're being today is not going to be the guy that achieves those goals. Rarely. We have to evolve. We have to develop. We have to have courage. We have to take steps. We have to be intentional. We have to be reflective. We have to surround ourselves with the right people, which maybe means being courageous. We
Mm,
have to look at who we're comparing ourselves to. And one of the easiest hacks for me is to look at somebody that is already where you want to be
yeah.
and then say, gosh, what is it about them? What are the qualities that I can adopt? You know, within my coaching program, and I'll just finish with this comment, Junaid, because it's such a great exercise. Is I say within my, you know, I have a men's, what I call shift men's group, and it's a men's group.
Mm,
And I say, okay, guys, here's what I want you to do. Think of 2 or 3 people that you know. You only have to know of them. You don't have to know them. They could be uh, famous or not famous. They could be dead. They can be alive. It doesn't matter. All I want you to do is make a list of all of the qualities of those individuals that you
mm,
admire. And they get busy and they make those lists. And I go, okay, now look at those lists and really refine it to say, these are definitely the qualities that I admire the most. And they give me their top 10 on a separate piece of paper. And I go, great, there's your to-do list. How long is it going to take you to achieve that? And that's literally an exercise that is eye-opening for many if they really take the
yeah.
time to realize that If I want to be like that, I have to be like that. So
I love it. It's like James Clear talks about in his book, right? You have to assume the identity of the person that you want to become, because that person's not gonna eat at later time, or that person's gonna drink sodas every day.
yeah,
You got to figure out who that person is so that you can assume the identity, and it becomes a lot easier for you to achieve those goals and grow
yeah.
to that
You
goal.
I'll give you an example, and you probably relate to this, Junaid, is that to the degree that we put ourselves out there into a public sphere, okay, this
Mhm.
podcast will go out, and if it goes out in video, audio, it doesn't matter. People are hearing us, they don't know us, they're going to judge us. If you're not
Yeah.
willing to let people judge you, if you're not willing to show up authentically and really understand and believe that some people are going to go, Patrick Francey, who the hell is he? And
Mm.
I don't care about those people. It's
Yep.
not that I don't care, I can't care. But I also know that I'm going to hear people, or I'm going to have people listen to this and hear this that are going, that's cool. This was so valuable for me because they align, they understand. But
Mm.
it's uncomfortable when you first start out. I'm sure when you started out with your podcast, it's like, oh my gosh, did I say the right thing? Did I do
Yeah.
it the right way?
Oh my God.
It takes courage to keep going because you're not as good as you are today. You weren't that good when you started your podcast,
Amen.
right? So
Amen.
these are the willingness and the courage to fumble and bumble and risk, your reputation and what people think of you. No, you got to be willing to do it.
I love
Not
that,
everybody's
man.
wired to do that.
You're absolutely right, and that's why there are more people that consume content. About a billion hour of content is consumed every day on YouTube, and then
But you
there are
see, oh, it's so
creators.
good. I'm get so fired up about this because there's a big difference between consuming and creating. And when
Yes.
you're creating that, you're putting energy out into the world. When you're consuming, you're sucking energy out of the world. And so,
Mm.
being in that creative space is generally what lights people up. But I'll go on this kind of tangent a little bit because it plays into what we were talking about. One of the biggest fears of people being creative and taking risks. I've coached many clients over the years in real estate and small business and personal professional development. And I'll ultimately get to a question where I just simply say, so what's your biggest fear? What do you think your biggest fear is? And many of them have this answer. You've probably heard it many times. You've even probably used it yourself. And that is fear of failure.
Yep. Fear of failure.
And
What if I fail? I can't
and
fail.
what if I fail? What if I fail? But here's the thing about that. Unpack that one more layer. We don't ask ourselves the right questions. So Dr. John DeMartini is somebody we've worked with many times over the years, not lately, but we certainly built a lot of our foundational stuff early
Hmm.
on in our own development around Dr. John DeMartini teaching, and the quality of our life is a reflection of the quality of the questions we ask ourselves, but we don't ask ourselves good questions generally. So when you take that fear of failure and you go, well, I'm afraid of failure. Oh, okay, great. Number one, few failures are catastrophic. They'll hurt, they'll cost, they'll piss you off, but they're very rarely catastrophic. Here's the truth. For I would say 95% of the people who are listening to this right now who say, no, my biggest fear is failure, I go, no, bullshit. Your biggest failure is your biggest fear of the people who you think are going to judge you, your friends,
Mm.
your family, your peers. That's your biggest fear. Because I fail every day. If you're in
Yeah.
business, you're failing. You're making decisions every day that don't work out, put in the correction, didn't work out, put in the correction. That's just the nature of the beast. You make 10 decisions, 8 of them suck, 2 of them work, good. My average is great. So you keep going. I don't have any fear of judgment. I do not
Mm.
fear. I don't care what anybody else thinks because at this point in my life, and I wish I would have got this lesson far earlier, at this point in my life, your opinion of me is none of my business. And quite frankly, I don't give a shit. Right. And as soon as I can drop that, as soon as I can let go of that fear of judgment, it's freeing. I just go do what I do.
Wow. Your opinion of me is none of my business. I like that.
Mm, it isn't.
Now, right, it's not because it doesn't affect how and what I do, right? It's inside of you,
Totally.
and
If somebody
the
wants to give me their opinion, even though I don't ask for it,
yeah.
my comeback is always that that's okay. When you elevate to this level, you'll understand it better. And then I leave it at that.
I love it. Now, I love that you talked about the personal growth, the professional growth, because that goes hand in hand with development of business strategies. You have a high performance person, you're going to go much farther. I remember 20 years ago, I was at this motel. We're traveling for this some work thing, and it was 3 a.m. and I'm watching TV.
Yeah.
And guess who comes on the television? Tony Robbins. And
Yeah.
he is full of energy. This infomercial is playing. I'm like, oh my God, who is this gentleman?
Yeah.
I need some of this. So I bought his CDs, Personal Power, and he talks about the reason you need personal power is because the person that's running the business is, guess what? It's not somebody else, it's you. So if you have control over your personality, over you and how you react, then you can take that business much more further along the way.
Well, I think there's a couple aspects to that, Junaid, which I would offer this thought process, which
Yeah.
is what I've come to the conclusion is that there's a book written by Jocko Willink, and I don't remember his partner's name in the book, but the book's called Extreme Ownership. I
Yeah.
can't recommend that book enough. You may not like how it's written, but it's the message is really great. But ultimately, we have to understand that when we take responsibility for our life, whether that's our business professionally, our careers, our business, our life personally, our relationships, okay? Our life is a reflection of who we're being. It's a reflection of the decisions we make or the decisions we don't make, which is a
Yeah.
decision. So if we can look in a mirror and go, our life is a reflection of who we are. And if we don't like our life, we better start unpacking who are we being. Because if you're attracting relationships that suck, if you're constantly fighting fires, living in drama, that's about you. That's about the choices you're making.
Yeah.
That's the direction you're taking your life. And so, from a personal development point of view, you have to be always reflective. You always have to look, one of the best versions or one of the best definitions, I should say, of success. I don't often ask the question anymore of my guests, for example. But there was one time that for some reason, I asked my guest, what is your definition of success? And it's the best definition I've ever received from my perspective. And he
Yeah.
said, if I wake up in the morning and I'm living the vision I have for my life, that's success. Wow. How much
That's
better
powerful.
and what a great way to articulate. It
Yeah.
wasn't about money. It wasn't about the size of his business.
Mm-mm.
It wasn't about the cars he drove. As a matter of fact, he was so under the radar, so wealthy. But for example, in his case, nothing fancy about the life he lived, nothing. But he loved his business. He loved his team. He loved his staff. And every day he was doing what he loved to do. So in his world, I check in. Is this the vision I have for my life? And that's including relationships, his business, his
Yeah.
friendships, all of it. And if the answer is yes, gosh, how much better, what a great way. How much
Yeah.
better could it be to measure success?
I love it, Patrick. This has been really revealing for me. Thank you so much for sharing so many amazing stories as well as practical applications that we can implement in our lives and think from that positive mindset, have those low tolerances so that we can become high performance people.
Mhm.
Let's take a quick break, and when we get back, we'll share. Uh, I'll ask you to share three quick hacks that people can implement in their lives, and we'll be right back after these messages. Play again. Hey guys, welcome back. We've been talking with Patrick Francey here on the podcast. Really powerful conversation. I'm like jumping with joy with the information that he's sharing with me. Not only because it makes sense, but because it's also so practical and makes so much sense. Because as human beings, and as entrepreneurs, we want to continue to grow at a faster pace than we are declining. And the only way to do that is by increasing and, adopting systems that are working for others. And what better way to learn from experts that have been doing this for so long than trying to figure it out on your own. So thank you so much, Patrick, for sharing.
I'm happy to. It's been great.
Now, our listeners always appreciate some practical tips that they can start using. And if you've given a lot of them, Patrick, um, would you mind sharing 3 hacks that business leaders or entrepreneurs can implement to begin creating a winning culture in their organization?
I think it boils down to, the first, when it comes to creating culture, it starts with you. So we have to be clear as owners, as the pointy end of the spear, that the business is a reflection of who we are, who
Mhm.
we want to, what we want to stand for. And then that has got to permeate the culture. That only comes from having a clear understanding with the team. Now, depending on how big your team is, I always like to draw everybody into that exercise that we do around creating culture, where we
Yeah.
have that list, everybody participates in it. And by the way, I bring suppliers in, because then we work backwards in our case, because we have front facing, we want to be able to talk to the clients. We want to,
Hmm.
how do we communicate with the clients? So we want it front facing right to the back end of the business, the stock boy kind of stuff, right? So that we're
Yeah.
all very clear on it. The important part of that is that when you do that, it's what you as a business stand for. That represents who you are, and it also
Mm.
represents who you are as client. So in other words, you start attracting clients that appreciate that culture. Now, the other side of that, on top of culture, is, have you created the environment? So what is the environment that your team says they want? Well, the entire, in the retail business that I own, the environment was, well, we want the front end of the store to always look great. It's got to be clean. It's got to be organized. It's got to be
Mm.
dusted. So we come to an agreement on what that environment means. It means that, oh, by the way, as a team, part of our culture, but part of our environment is that the lunchroom is kept clean.
Yeah.
People throw their garbage, they wash their dishes. These are all agreements. And this is the key to all of this. One of the best, or I think one of the most important things that we can do as owners, as the leaders, is manage expectations. And so that there isn't unstated expectations
Hmm.
or even unstated assumptions. So expectations and assumptions, rather than have those, we state the expectation. We don't make assumptions, we ask questions. Now, that's all part of creating a great culture, but also of creating a great environment that literally is a reflection to your client, because how your team communicates with your clients, how
Yeah.
they treat each other, how they look after the office that you might be in, or the shop that you might be in, or whatever that environment is, everybody sees it. And they start to see the respect of how your team treats each other. So again, another long answer to a short question, but hopefully that one has some value as well.
I love it, man. So build the culture so that it is reflected in the rest of the employees, and you're setting a good example for the clients and for the people that are coming in to say, hey,
It
we
just
want to work with
permeates.
this. Yeah.
And then have those agreements. I'll share one other thing that I want everybody to understand in a mindset kind of way. And this is a lesson I learned many years ago, and I'll share it with you quickly. A little story is, when I first met my wife 35 years ago, I used to joke that I was her favorite Neanderthal. I was a little rough around the edges, brought up on the wrong side of the tracks. I was definitely dating up at that point. And I would say things and do things, and she would watch and she'd observe, and she'd go, why are you that way? Why would you answer that question that way? Why would you treat that person that way? And I often would say, it's just the way I am. And one day I said that, and she looked at me and she goes, Patrick, it's a choice, right? I go, what? What do you mean? She goes, how you're being what, how you're reacting, how you're treating others is a choice. Oh, fuck, well, that never even occurred to me. Well, that was the journey that I then, in that moment in
Mm,
time, was the fork in the road. And I went, holy cow, am I ever naive? And so at that point, I realized that who I'm being, how I want to show up, how I want to communicate, the relationships I want to build are a choice, my choice. And I get to define and design who I am as a man, as a
nice.
father, as a grandfather, as a husband, as a son, consciously. And I take that on, and it is being true to who I am. It's not making shit up. It's like, this fits, this works. This is who I want to be.
Yeah,
I'm excited about that, but it's a choice.
absolutely, man. Thank you so much for these hacks that we can implement. It is a choice on how we behave. It is a choice on how we react. It is completely under our control how we are being every single moment of the day.
Mhm.
Let's move on to the last segment of the podcast. Fun six questions so we can get to know you a little bit better.
Sure.
Patrick, what's the one hobby that you wish you had more time to get into?
I have time now. I still haven't taken it on, but playing guitar or playing a
Mm.
musical instrument is something that I've always said I would like to be able to do. I joke that, I can barely play a radio, so I'm not sure I could play an instrument. So I have no excuses anymore, but that would be certainly one of the things that I want to pick up. I do have a guitar, by the way. All I have to do is pick it up.
I love it. I love it. Thanks so much. Next up, what did you want to be when you were a child?
Oh gosh, that's an interesting question. I think, we go through all those things. I want to be a fireman. I wanted to be a marine biologist. I
Yeah.
wanted to, do all those kind of classic things. When I was about 13 years old, uh, through a conversation I had with a older brother that became a brother-in-law, and he said something to me around some financial things, and I realized that that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to take control of my financial future.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, what that translated into was being a business owner. So at the time, I always had aspirations of being in a corner office, being the boss, being a CEO, overlooking the city, some version of that.
Yeah.
And ultimately, that was, I think, one of the things that I aspired to be. But I really hit my stride when I was about 18 years old.
I love it, man. Thank you so much for sharing that question, that answer. Next up, what is your favorite movie or TV show?
Yeah, I don't have a favorite TV show. I don't watch a lot of TV. I'm not even a big fan of movies these days. But having
Sure.
said that, my one of my favorite movies was Shawshank Redemption. I loved that movie. I enjoyed The Matrix, the first one or
Mm-hmm.
two. I kind of lose the plot with a lot of these sequels or whatever they call them. But
Yeah,
ultimately, yeah, those are a couple that I really enjoyed.
I love it. Matrix was is also one of my favorite ones for the longest time because of the reality. Hey, you have a choice. You either can take the red pill, or take the blue pill, and
Oh,
go back
how
into dreamland.
appropriate is that these days?
So much. All right, next up, if you could play any character in any movie, which one would it be?
If I can, as long as I can be a superhero saving a damsel in distress or
I
saving the world, I'm in.
love it. Which takes us to the next question. Who is your favorite superhero?
Oh man. Okay. Do I have a favorite? I'm kind of okay. I don't know if I have a favorite one, but I'm a big
Sure.
fan of Hulk. Hulk, for some reason, I kind of like that. And Wonder Woman. I mean, gosh, who doesn't love Wonder Woman? No,
Who
I'm
doesn't love
joking.
her? Yeah. No, absolutely. Hulk is absolutely amazing. I actually had a action figure of him, which is about this tall,
Ah,
and I think I sold that one. I can't remember, but I do have a 20-inch character
oh,
of Iron Man sitting back here.
look at you go. That's awesome. Yeah, very good.
It took me 2 years to build that one, so it's been a fun little journey. All
Yeah.
right, last question. If you were a board game, which one would you be and why?
Oh gosh. I don't I think I don't play a lot of board games, but if
Sure.
I was that, it would have to be probably Trivial Pursuit.
Hmm. That's a really good one. I haven't played that game in a while. I mean,
Yeah.
the last board game we played was um I think the Settlers of Catan and some Monopoly.
Well, I do a lot of research. I'm a research kind of individual, especially
Hmm.
when it comes to the economy and what's going on economically, macro, micro, all the things that go on. And
Yeah.
so Trivial Pursuit is that kind of game where if you're paying attention, you're picking up on the nuances of some of these questions.
Hmm. I love that. Well, Patrick, it's been fantastic having you on the show today. Your insights into building a winning culture and environment for high performance are incredibly valuable. Before we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like our listeners to share with our listeners?
Well, something I think the only thing that I would finish on this is that understand and look for your purpose. Hopefully, you understand what your purpose is because it changes everything in terms of how you operate, how you live your day, how you live your life.
Man, thank you so much again. How can our audience connect with you and learn more about the Real Estate Investment Network and the Everyday Millionaire podcast?
The easiest thing to do is reach out or follow me P Francie on my Instagram or tedm.podcast on Instagram and LinkedIn, P Francie on LinkedIn and
Perfect.
Twitter. I'm on all those social media.
All the social medias, right?
I'm
I'll be
around.
sure, yeah, I'll be sure to include all the links in the show notes
That'd be
so that
great.
people can connect with you. Thank you all for tuning into Hacks and Hobbies. Until next time, keep building, growing, and hacking away at your goals and passions. Thanks so much, and see you in the next episode.